Welcome back to another episode of the Tim Macy Show. And today I am lucky enough to have Amy Chorew on. Amy, how are you?
I am great. Excited to be here, Tim.
Thanks for hopping on. Um, I've known you for 5 or 6 minutes,
Mhm.
right? We've had a conversation before, but you've been in the industry for a while. And I know I interview a lot of people who have just found success and they've just figured out something cool to do, or they've been in the industry for, say, 5 years and done really well. And I think there's two different things that I see a lot and that I love, which is I love vision. And so there's a lot of young people coming into the industry with vision of like how to do things different and all this other great fun stuff. But I think sometimes we discount the value of perspective, right? And you have you've been in the industry, you've been really in the industry. Like maybe somebody's aunt who sold a couple houses and had their license for a lot of years has been quote unquote in the industry, but you've been in it in a deeper way. And so I'd love to get as much of that perspective out of you as I can over our talk today.
Fantastic. I'm excited.
So give me the kind of quick origin story of Amy in real estate. When'd you get started? What's that path look like to where you're at now? And if you want to have some fun with it, I'd love to hear the story of your first real estate transaction or whatever your most memorable early one was.
I have actually two really great ones in the beginning, but let me give you the 30-second elevator pitch of who I am. Got into real estate in 1987, was working with a company that had a lot of new construction. So I managed about 12 subdivisions from all their marketing, working with their salespeople, selling in the models. Loved it. By 2000, I was bored, so I went back to school to learn how to write courseware. I went and learned about instructional design, adult learning theory, and I started writing courses and it blew up. So we started an education company. And in 2009, NAR asked me to rewrite ePro. I had no,
Yes.
and that was because of a tweet, Tim. I tweeted something. I was an early twit. That course, I had no idea that how big that was. An NAR course, right? So it put me on the map. I was speaking. I was never home, speaking, training. And then in 2012, I took a corporate job. First time I ever had a paycheck. Tim, every 2 weeks, money was in my bank. It was a cool thing.
In
But
the same amount every time.
yeah, and
That's
stocks and bonus. But it was a Fortune 500 real estate firm. I had to hire a business coach because I never realized that as an entrepreneur, some of the skill set that my corporate friends have, I'd never experienced. So I actually learned a lot there, a lot of emotional intelligence, how to communicate correctly, up and down, all that good stuff, how to work a room. I left 2 years ago. I have been consulting and I'm back selling. I think I did 6 units last year, not a lot. I'm debating whether to go back full time as I'm now kind of can do whatever I want. I'm at that place in my life. So here I am.
all right. Well, tell me about that first or second or third, like really fun, memorable transaction you had.
Okay. One was a for sale by owner. When I moved to Connecticut out of New York, the company I moved to gave me a list of leads. And because they didn't like me, because I was a know it all, a New Yorker, couldn't keep my mouth shut, right? I started calling these leads. I'm like, this is really hard. And then someone told me they were FISBO. So I wanted to prove to them that I could do it. I was driving home one day. We had had a sale, got a listing at the model I was working at. I was feeling good. Walked up to this house that was a FISBO, knocked on the door, and about ready to just leave my card. And the window on the second floor opens. And the person goes, what do you want? I'm like, hi, Amy Chorew from XYZ Realty. If you are thinking about maybe working with a firm, I'd love to tell you how we can market your home. And he's like, go away. And he shuts the window. So my heart is pounding. But I had gotten to the point where I was like, no one does that to me. So literally, boom, boom, boom. I pound on the door again. The window opens and he goes, what do you want? I go, sir, I go, you might be having a really bad day, but that is no way to talk to another human being. So, as I said, I'm going to leave my card here. And if you decide to work with that real estate firm, talk to me. So he goes, wait, he goes, you're the only realtor who knocked twice. I got the listing. It was the worst deal of my life. But I did something with my mindset. Like now, when I would call people and they would be like, "Meh, meh, meh," I took it as you need me, you need me. And I wasn't afraid anymore. So that was one of my big ups.
I love that. I love that. The other thing I love about that too is a lot of times our agents will get into transactions with those kinds of personalities, and someone is angry, and our immediate reaction is to make them happy. And what happens is people like that, it doesn't work, right? And sometimes when you get that type of personality that pushes you like that, the way to connect with them a lot of times is to push right back, So, like, give it right back to them, and so I love that story because I think that's true in a lot of our cases where, like, I have the fun job of coming in when things are tough. Like, I get the nobody ever calls me because they're like, "Hey, I want you to take part in this transaction that's going really smooth. It's a ton of fun. Why don't you just, like, hop on this great conversation we're having?" No, it's always world's on fire, deal's about to fall through, and everything else.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you get those types of hard driving, I know it all personalities, a lot of times they respond better when you drive right back at them and they say, "Oh, oh, okay, all right." And then they totally look at the conversation differently. Yeah, that's super interesting. Okay, so started there, New York to Connecticut. You're selling some houses. You wind up kind of deep in the NAR world, right? Like with the ePro stuff. I think this is kind of timely with everything that's going on. What do you think agents' biggest misconceptions are about NAR and everything else? Because I can tell you as a younger agent, I think it's crazy, right? Like, this is crazy. And I know some of it is, but I also know there is some value there as well. And I see right now there's a lot of talk of like, just get rid of NAR, just get rid of it. And I'm like, look, want it to change and I want it to be a lot different. I don't know if I want it to not exist, you know? And so
Yeah.
I don't know. What's your take there? What's your view? Give me some perspective because I don't have much.
Okay. Thanks for your question. The one thing that NAR brings to the table is their active part in shaping laws that impact home ownership. If you look at their track record, and that's why we all give to RPAC, they have done some marvelous things. And we are one of the largest trade associations out there, so we have some clout. I'm not saying there's not a lot of probably things that shouldn't have gone on, don't go on, but they have made my life easy or as a realtor. That I like. The other thing that I do like is when I got that job, I had that course from 2009 to 2018. So it was nice. I ended up not doing any of the local committees. I went right to the national level and I've been on NAR committees. I've been on data strategies and the Federal Technology Policy Committee. The cool committee is the federal technology because that's right here what all of the people are doing with our senators and our congressmen. So I love that. The other thing is for me the referral network. I belong to Women's Council of Realtors. There's lots of groups out there. Three of my transactions this year were Women's Council referrals because I'm just starting to get back into letting my network knowing that I'm selling. I have mentors in that group. I can call these people and they've changed my life and my career for good. So those would be the two. I don't like everything else that's going on. Being a woman in the tech part of the business, being when had my Fortune 500 career, I was director of training, but I also brought all their tech products to market. And a lot of times I was the only woman in the room and you have to establish kind of a pissy attitude to get a table there. So I can only imagine. I believe everything they said about what went on there. So that sticks.
Yeah, I think as agents, we battle this is a disconnect from the consumer. because we end up in agent world. We end up in our agent bubble in the way we talk about things, the way we say things. Like we use terms that the consumer doesn't understand. We talk in a way the consumer doesn't understand because we're just surrounded by agents and you get that disconnect.
Yep.
And I feel like, it probably is the same thing in that organization that when you have a disconnect from the people you're supposed to serve, bad things happen.
Yeah.
Bad things happen and you feel like you can do whatever you want, however you want it. And so I'm hoping not to stay on this topic for too long, but I'm hoping for some great change and not a total wipe, but like the great reset, like the new NAR. What does the new NAR look like? So we'll see how that goes. Now, with the things that are going on with the lawsuits around commission and that whole side of things, we think about how compensation is going to be disclosed and how compensation is going to work, how compensation is going to talk about. And whenever I think about compensation, I think about value. Like value gets compensated.
Yep.
And what are your feelings around the value of the agent in the transaction and how that goes as far as the compensation?
Tim, it's one of my favorite topics. I am amazed at how people at realtors, my buddies, are afraid to articulate who they are. I always say when I teach classes or I see people, you have to be that person in everyone's phone. As soon as they think of real estate, they call you. And how do you get them there? You have to train them what to say. So many stories where agents will be at their friends' events. I actually have a friend in Manhattan. He was at an event. This is what got me going on value prop. And I'll address the compensation. Can I just tell you this one story, though I
Yeah, of
think it's
course.
relevant? He's younger. He's in his 30s. He worked for a large brand at the time. He was at an event, a friend's party, and he starts connecting with this another mutual friend. They really hit it off. And at the end of the conversation, this guy goes, "So what do you do for a living?" He goes, "I'm in real estate, blah, blah, blah." He goes, "Oh, I wish I knew." He goes, "I just listed one of my family's co-ops." And so my friend, his heart is beating, trying not to be discouraged. He goes, "So what's the address?" It was a $4 million property. So he's like, he calls me, he goes, "Amy, what am I doing wrong?" And I said, "You got to coach your friends." So he called his friend whose party it was, and he started with him. And now he has people, as soon as they think about real estate, they're like, "Oh my God, you have to call him. And here's his phone number." That's where we need to be. For some reason, we're afraid of that. So when you come to compensation, it's even worse. Can you articulate why a buyer should pay you? What if it gets to that the seller can say, and the seller agent can say, zero compensation for a buyer agent? What are you going to do? Now, good news is that there's a lot of action right now. Mortgage companies, title companies are trying to figure out how to make sure that that fee can be incorporated in a mortgage, right? Because a buyer's going to have to pay it anyway. But we have some real training to do.
Yeah, and I think when I do love that about training your sphere because I've got agents. We did drive-in movie theaters. We did so much stuff for our sphere, but yeah, I don't think we really probably enough spent the time to say, hey, thank you for coming to this movie theater we rented out. Thank you for coming this event we just spent a ton of money on. Thank you. Just so you know, we love helping people buy and sell houses. If you know anybody, like I don't know. That's the part a lot of us forget. So I think training your sphere on how to refer you is super interesting. Even just telling them how to refer you and that, hey, if you ever know of anyone, that's getting into this buying process, throw us on a group text message together. Like
Exactly.
give them exactly how to do it so there's much less friction.
So now that I've started into real estate, I've been doing with that with my friends. It's almost obnoxious. I get tagged on stuff on social.
Yeah.
"You need to talk to my friend Amy." And I'm like, it's nothing that I would ever want to be involved with. You know what? More is better. Think about this. If you have someone in your phone that, like for me, if I want to go to a restaurant, I can never think of a new restaurant. I have a foodie friend. All I have to do is, where should I go? Or I need to go binge another TV show. I've got a friend that I know, what should I watch? How did they get to be that in my phone? They talk about it. So we need to have good information to share. So people go, so what's going on in real estate? For me, I love data. I actually look at about 50 data points in the Connecticut market. So when I talk to people, I can actually say stuff like, in your part of town, there were last year 30 real buyers between 950 and a million, but from a million to and up, there was only 8 real buyers. So where's the prices really going? Or some of the other things that, what is your home worth? But if people know that you're that person, whether you've texted them or you're on social, hopefully they'll call you.
Yeah, I love that too. I think the data thing is really interesting because I like to be a nerd with real estate, and we've talked about this on another podcast. It's like embrace being a nerd, but I think the thing is everybody can look at the data, everybody can look at the numbers, but how good are you at communicating it
Right.
in a simple way
Right.
that people understand? In the way you just did, I like that. I've never heard that before, but that's a great way to put it is that there were 30 buyers in this price range and there were only 8 real buyers in this price range. Like that's really easy to understand where we would say, hey, well, inventory is higher in these higher price ranges and things have higher days on market and people they don't know what that means. They don't know what that
They
means.
don't know what days on market or absorption rate is. So I actually price band the top 10% of my market and a little bit under. And there has to be 15 live listings for it to be in a band. So a band could be 50,000, it could be 100,000. When it gets up in the higher brackets, it's more of a price. It could be 150. So then I keep those price bands and I run the numbers every month. So because it's in my brain, I have that history and you've got to do it yourself. Lessons have made it so much easier, but active sales and some of the other data I'm watching now is how, because of the crazy pricing, right? And now that prices are back, I've been able to track and show people, yes, through 2021, we were seeing houses overpriced, but let me show you what's happening now because of interest rates and everything else, because we still have sellers. Just had one. I just closed on a condo where the seller still was in the 2021 mindset. It's like, no, I'm sorry. You can't get that. This is where we have to be. But because I use data, she didn't take it too personal.
Yeah, and talking to sellers, that's always a fun one too,
Just
especially when the market has changed and nobody wants to think the value of their house is going down. Like it's only ever going up, you know? Like I update the value on my net worth every month and I probably go through all the real estate quarterly and it's like it's gone down a little bit. But man, when it was going up, it was a lot easier. When it's going down, I'm like, "Wait, is it really going down? Let me run these numbers again. Let me double check this." But the biggest thing I like to do with sellers is agree with them and be on their side. And so when somebody says, "Hey, my condo is worth 850," you're like, "I get it, but it's actually not worth 850 and here's why." And they're like, "Oh, you disagree with me." You know? And instead it's like, "Look, yeah, your condo is beautiful and 850 is a great price. I don't know if that's where the market is right now." And then you blame the market, you show them the numbers. But too many times we like to argue with our clients and then we don't even realize we're arguing with them. But just the way we say things is pushing them back. So, have you dealt with any other clients that are in the 2021 mindset?
less now because I think the media has put it out there. I do have a potential buyer. It's actually my cousin's daughter. I don't think she'll listen to your podcast. But, wants waterfront for under a million. So we're having a little bit of conversation with her. She's going to have
Yeah,
to go. She wants to be 2 hours out of the city. Well, we're going to have to go a little bit farther to get,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
Waterfront 2 hours out of the city. That would be nice under 1 million.
not, well,
Yeah,
it's the Zillow conversation. It's like, but this is what they say. My house is worth. We're still
yeah,
dealing with that.
yeah, yeah. And I say, oh, that's great. No, this is really interesting. Let's look at the actual data. Now that we got the estimate data, let's look at the real data. But I love agreeing with people. Like, man, that's amazing that Zillow says that. So great. I'm glad you found that. Let's look at the actual data. Yeah, it's always fun. So look, been in the business for a while, done a lot of different things. If you have agents that have been in this industry for the last, say, 5 years, which is actually an interesting time to be in the industry because you had like 2 good years, you had 2 like unheard of years, and now you've got one that feels a little bit more challenging. If you ask me, it feels a lot like 2016, 2017 when I started. It doesn't feel that much different. But because it's the roller coaster, it feels different. So, with the perspective of seeing cycles and all that other fun stuff, what would you tell agents they should be focused on doing right now? Like, what are the things they should be worrying about, and what are the things they should stop worrying about?
Thanks for your question again. It's all about the sphere, really being able to make sure people know what you do and how to find you and what to do if they hear of anybody thinking about real estate, because listings are key and only if people know what you're doing. So, how are you going to stay in touch with that sphere and how are you going to enhance your sphere? So, I've been watching all the different ways, and I think that's something people have to figure out what works best for them. I see people going back to print and analyzing which are the best moving markets and staying more close to home, not being all over the place. I see during the crazy years, people were taking listings and buyers in areas that they normally might not. I think you have to be back into a more concise area, but do some analysis. So if it's a town that you market or a farm, stay more and find out what areas in those towns are moving and then figure out how to market to them. But then your sphere, your A, B, and C, the people who adore you, who as soon as someone talks about real estate, you've already trained them. Then the people who have to be asked, like, do you know anybody in real estate? You have those friends, bring them up a level and then figure out what is the content people want to hear about from you and what resonates with your personality. And people are all over the place. Like for me, it's data. Other people do all sorts of cool things. It's just not my jam. So you have to figure out how you can connect with your clients. I don't know if that helped, but that's kind of where
It does. It does. No, it made me think of something we've been talking a lot about, and I'm glad you brought up mail. And the reason I'm glad you brought up mail is that when we head into this market, the same inputs give you less outcomes. So if you made 2 videos and put them on Instagram and you did that every week, you get less output or less outcomes than you do a year or two ago.
right.
And here's the thing, when if I send out a mailer and it brings me less deals, what happens? I send out less mailers. When in actuality, the opportunity is in doing more video and doing more mail. One, because it's going to take more action to get the same outcome. And two, as everyone else is pulling back, you get amplified, right? Because right now, like in my mailbox, I live in a pretty decent like neighborhood. There's a pretty good turnover rate. So I know all the metrics, it's pretty high up there for real estate agents should mail this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I get a ton. Like I'd get like 4 or 5 different agents that mail me. Now, I think it's down to one. I think now one or two agents that mail me. And so that's where going all in when everybody's pulling back is definitely the thing to do. Now the other thing is, so you've had the career, what do you think agents should be focused on from a financial planning standpoint? Because I believe agents are, I'm not talking about myself here. I'm actually talking about myself, are very good at spending all of the money that they make. And they just assume they're going to keep making more money every year. And they keep buying the bigger house, the nicer car. So not everybody, obviously, but what financial advice would you have for agents as they are getting going in their career?
I love that you asked this question. I don't know if you know this. I just wrote a course called Fiscal Fitness, How to Keep More of What You Earn. And it is because most real estate agents, whether you're new or if you're in, even those who have been in the business for many years, have never set up a plan so they can retire. They don't know how to do that. So I'll address the new. If you're new, I would recommend, first of all, that you create a policy. You need an attorney, you need a financial planner or an accountant, or even just a bookkeeper to help track your numbers. Start with a business plan get your business plan, bring that business plan to a financial planner. Now, 15 years ago, my sister, who's a CPA, said to me, "Are you ready to retire?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I own all these real estate properties." She goes, "You are not ready." She goes, "Go see a financial planner." I went with, I'm embarrassed to say, but at the time I had $125,000. I felt like a jerk. But I owned some rentals, some nice rental properties. I am now 15 years later ready to retire. I can retire, Tim. I don't have to work. And that's because my financial planner and my business plan aligned. And I have traditional vehicles and non traditional vehicles, meaning I have some of the traditional financial vehicles that help me save taxes and help me raise money. One of them is called and I'm going to go way too in the weeds, so shut me up, but it's called the personal 401k. So my husband and I are on a payroll. I pay $50 a month for a payroll, and you can put up to $26,000 into these accounts. Now, because I'm going to get too involved here, but because of the way
No,
we
this
pay
this this is what we love. We love
this,
the details.
so I am an LLC, but I file my taxes as an S corp, and as a result, I now can do profit sharing on those personal 401ks. So in those 2 good years, I put $63,000 away in both of our accounts for 2 years. I'm not doing it this year. I can't, but that lowered my taxable income. I paid almost half of what I was paying taxes. And I have money now that's sitting there. So that's the first thing. But the other is non-traditional. If you're in real estate, you better own real estate. And it could be passive properties, which I'm actually starting to do now as we're getting in our older years. I'm selling some of the properties with our tenants in it, and we're buying passive income properties. So those are units like 200, they're SEC regulated.
And syndications.
Yeah, syndication. So you have to go after the investor. I belong to a group though. It cost me 20 grand to join this group. But what's wonderful is everyone uses the same pro forma, all the investors. And I have a crew of 4 people. We're all over the country. We meet once a month. And because we're all looking at the same properties, we can look at them. So some of the properties I've invested in, they refi or sell after 3 years, and I get a quarterly check on the amount of money I've invested. So after 3 years, they tell me I'm going to either double my money, and then I take that money and I invest in another passive. That is one way, but Airbnbs, syndications, REIT, tokenization, there's so many ways to invest in real estate. And you want that income coming in when you're sleeping. And that's what those do.
So I've heard a couple things
That's
here.
a lot.
One,
I know.
yeah, no, no, no. Well, just so you know, when I started out, I looked at traditional financial stuff as for everyone else, and I was just going to do real estate because that's what I do. And I didn't really have any interest in doing traditional financial stuff. That changed as, like you said, as the income went up, as I realized like real estate is usually higher returns. It is usually better. On the same hand, it's usually always more work. And I started to value my time
Right.
because, I look at time as an asset. And so where we're at, we've done flips, we've had rentals, we've done the Airbnb thing, done lent money. I mean, we've done a lot of it, which is cool because I've got a little bit about everything kind of thing. And now, like you said, we're just in syndications and more passive projects. But I think the thing for agents is what you said is the earlier you get this stuff set up, the better. Like if you don't have the LLC with the S corp with the 401k set up, so you are getting some tax. Like even if you're making, when you're making 100 grand and you're putting some of it away, like it just doesn't seem like that much. But I can tell you when you get to 2 to 3 and continuing on, and hopefully everybody makes more every year and all that other fun stuff, it's gonna make a big difference. And the fact that you started early is gonna make a bigger difference. And so don't avoid this stuff. It's like getting your will set up. It's like getting your accounting and your books in order. I don't know how many teams that I know that are doing hundreds of thousands in GCI, but like still don't have their book set up because nobody wants to step out of the fun stuff, which is selling houses and prospecting and production and all that other fun stuff, and get into this boring paperwork stuff of setting this stuff up. So
So Tim,
important that you do it.
I would recommend, and that's why I said I kind of bared my soul. 15 years ago, I had a lot of real estate, but not a lot of cash. I would say, as you're doing your business planning for 2024, get that business plan and bring it to a financial planner. They will interpret that and figure out how to put a plan together so you're saving for taxes and you're starting to put a money away for retirement. And that's the beautiful thing. We do these business plans and we walk away from them. They've got value. But you also said bookkeeping. You can go to Fiverr and get someone to do your books for you. Very cheap. I'm horrible with it. I have QuickBooks. I have a bookkeeper that I pay a minimal amount and they balance everything. And I actually know how to read my P&L.
Yes.
If you are an entrepreneur, which you are as a real estate agent, better be having the entrepreneur mindset. Don't go from deal to deal. Start earlier than me. Like I only started when I was in my late 40s, and that was too late. I think now what I could have done if I had started in my 30s, how much farther I would be along. So I'm still in a good place. And that's the bottom line. It's you don't need gazillions. They're saying that for I'm going to say people in their 30s, my financial planner said if you could have a goal of 3 million, you can retire okay because of the way that money will grow with compound
Hmm.
interest. But she said that most people are retire with between 90 to 120,000 a year, and they can do it because they budget and they pay things off. So you can tell I get excited about this because the reason we wrote this is my a niece bought a condo in Santa Barbara. My sister took the realtor out to lunch and my sister calls me all emotional. She goes, Amy, this woman for 20 years has been making a god awful amount of money and she has no plan for her retirement. She goes, is that normal? And I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and I think we get so hung up on GCI per year and home sold per year, and I go to all these events, and it's like, oh, they did this much GCI, and you're like, oh, they must have it together. Like that's what you think as an agent that goes to these events, you look and you see how much money people are making in GCI, which
yeah,
is the worst number to look at, and you're like, they're doing great.
yeah,
And I've been lucky enough to have a lot of conversation with a lot of people. And look, this is not a knock on the people on stage at all. This is just like the way the world is. And that so many of them are just, that they're doing well, but their net is not that great, or they haven't saved that much, or the amount of hours a week they work is not aligned with how I want to live. And just getting a better whole perspective on not like having a whole perspective on your business is important, but there is a thing where we take inspiration from and we follow other people and we try to follow in their footsteps. And it's good to analyze those footsteps a little bit more before you start following them, and actually look like, hey, what is it that, I can take from Tim's story that I really love? But let me make sure I'm not like running into some other landmines by going that direction.
it's funny. My financial planner, when I saw him 15 years ago, he goes, Amy, because I've retired people with $125,000. He goes, and I've retired people with 7 million. And some people who have 7 million don't have enough money each month because they've never adjusted their lifestyle
Yes.
as they move forward. So, like you said, you might be making a lot of GCI, but lifestyle choices can make that not even that valuable.
Yeah, I just did a talk on investing because I've invested in a development deal and some syndication stuff and these things. And I post about it and people start hitting me up. I want to get started in investing. I get that message. I want to get started in investing. And people a lot of times in the current financial situation they're in, they look at investing as the way to solve the problem. Like they're looking at their life and they're like, I don't see retirement. I need to start investing.
Right.
When in actuality, almost everybody I talk to actually needs to start saving. They need to lower their spending. Like they need to spend less money
Yep.
and they need to save more money. And you need to be a saver before you can be an investor. Because, like you said, you can have all the money in the world, but if your living expenses, if you haven't figured out how to live cheaper, you'll just keep spending that money. You make, 100 grand one year, you spend it all. You make 300 one year, you spend all that. You make 500 the next, and you spend all that. And you're like, you make 400 the next year, and all of a sudden you're broke, making 400,000. That's not a place anybody wants to be. And so being a saver
Yeah.
and lowering your expenses is probably the biggest foundation of being an investor.
We actually did a budget this year because I potentially could retire. I'm still going to be selling real estate and doing some of my writing my courses, which is passive
Yeah.
income for me. But we forced ourselves to live on a budget this year, and it was interesting. We did it most months, so I was so proud of us. And yeah, I am with you.
I think it goes against the driving thing of being in real estate of I'm gonna make more, I gotta get out there, I gotta do more deals, I gotta make more. Wait, I'm gonna spend less? Like that doesn't align. I'm out here making more. Of course I'm gonna spend a little more. But it does because I think you need to fall in love with not just making more, but growing that net worth. And that's something we started tracking every month. So every month I update the net worth to see where we're at. And if I'm falling in love with the net worth and falling in love with the P&L more than I'm falling in love with the income, I find things go better.
Also, ROI. Most of us will. You talked about mailings. You may not get as much business. Are you tracking all of your marketing spend, and are you really getting an ROI on it? And that's a hard thing for people to analyze as well. And
Yeah. Yeah, I think we talk all the time about you have an agent come in and they're like, I think I'm gonna stop spending money on realtor.com. The leads just haven't been that good. Like, okay, so you feel like you're gonna stop investing. What's your ROI? Like, what's your cost per closing on that? How much did you make on realtor.com? They're like, I don't know. I feel like those leads aren't as good. I was like, stop feeling and start knowing
so
what your numbers are.
exactly.
But so on that note, what are some things that you think agents should be looking at as they come into this business plan? And we talked about financial, which I think is big. What else do you see agents not doing that maybe you think they should when it comes to planning for the future?
Couple of things: time management, making sure your calendar has all the prospecting times first, marketing, and anything else you need to do. You really need to run yourself like you're an employee with a company and keep that schedule, or you'll never make it in this industry. There's a lot of that. First thing, time management. And then being able to, do the business plan, stick with it. I'm trying to think. I had one other thing and I lost thought. But time
That's
management,
I always do that. I'm like, I've got three things, and then I only have two because I forget the third one by the time I get to number three. But on time management, I have a personal question because personal to me, probably some other people that are listening. You talk about time management. Being a parent and being a real estate agent and weighing those two things, how does that play out? Where do you feel like you did well? Where do you feel like maybe you missed a little bit? And what advice would you give to agents?
I don't know how
Because you've got the perspective now. Like I'm in the middle of it. I got an 8-year old. I'm trying to figure out how to do this.
when my kids might say different things, but when they were in middle school and into high school, I was home when they got home from school. So I would block out from like 3 o'clock till like 6 because that's when the conversations start, right? That was the first thing, just being there. And then the running around, right? For all of their soccer and the football, that will not be there forever. Family is priority. And if you let clients, and I am so guilty of that, I would take calls on Thanksgiving and my family would be looking at me askance. And I had no concept what a jerk I was being. I really didn't. Real estate ruled me. And later on, I figured out that that was not the right thing to do. And I regret missing so many of the things I did with my children because it's over now. It's such a short time. It's like, suck it up, buckle up, embrace what you have with your kids, make them the best humans they can be, And if your real estate suffers, it won't. I always believe in karma. Like if you do one thing, something else happens. Like I remember I would be like farming, I would be going door to door, getting nothing, depressed. And the next day I'd get a walk in and it would like make up for all the stuff. I always watch how real estate does that, right? I don't know
I
if I
love
answered
that.
your question, but that's how I feel.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I think that that's great. I think one of the things for me, this is something I'm not talking to someone who's conquered the mountain. I'm talking as someone who is constantly tired on the mountain. But one thing I've found is that we carry the stress of the transaction with us throughout our day. So you got some deal that's falling apart. You don't know if this buyer is going to call you. Like you really need this 1.2 million buyer to want to see houses. And like you carry all that stuff with you through your day. So your kid is talking to you about school and you're thinking about all these other things. And I am so guilty of this on a regular occasion. And I think practicing the habits of turning the notifications off on your phone, putting your phone in another room, and actually like just being very intentional about saying, "Hey, I am going to wipe my mind of these problems for 1 hour." For 1 hour. In 1 hour with your family, when you've chosen to wipe those problems from your head and actually be present for an hour, is far better than 3 hours of you sitting with them thinking about all the other things, not really listening to them, like maybe on your phone and being half there for 3 hours. I'd rather be super present, super intentional, take that weight off my shoulders of my business, put it down, and be hyper present for an amount of time than being half present for the whole time.
You need to start a movement, Tim. I don't know. We need a hashtag, we need a meme, but emotional intelligence will create that. And if I think it's a good test, if we cannot put our phone away for 1 hour, that says that you are not in the right headspace. Sorry. And I know that there's all these gurus and business people, but they got people to do their things. Most of us don't have people to do our things.
And the thing is, look, I get it. We talk about speed to lead, lead comes in, you follow up, like love all that stuff when you're working. But there's very, very few problems in the hundreds of deals we've done that I can think of that needed me to pick up the phone within an hour. Like your problems will be waiting for you when you get to that phone an hour from now or 2 hours from now. They're not going anywhere. That's where like you can actually, I believe, turn your phone off at say 8 o'clock at night. Like there's not, and I do that a lot now. There's nothing that comes in at 8 o'clock that can't be handled at 8 a.m. the next morning. Usually not. And obviously there's a couple circumstances. But that's the thing. We have to acknowledge that look, like the things that we have going on in our business, I can get to them in an hour. If it's 8 o'clock at night, I can get to it tomorrow morning. Like you can give yourself that space. And when you give yourself that space, I feel like you start operating in a better place.
My mentor once told me, "We're not saving lives here, Amy. It's okay. It can wait till tomorrow." Okay. Though, so many of us, we need some kind of trigger to remind us of that. Because I'll just include myself. I'm not good at that. If I don't have something to worry about, I worry. So we have to figure out how to get rid of that mental state.
Like I said, I'm still on the mountain too. Like this is all stuff that I will do what I just said not to do. I will do it today. I will probably do it today, maybe tomorrow. It for sure will happen. But I think I've had moments where I've done it well and it's been good. The other thing I will hit on too is the whole nighttime thing. Is that you get somebody angry at 8:30 at night, like call them in the morning because I can tell you they're probably going to be better after sleeping on it.
Right.
Like sleeping on something is one of the best things you can do to a problem. And so by forcing it by just going to bed yourself, it sometimes works out.
I like it.
So tell me about syndication stuff because that's something that we're getting into. It's something that I've been talking to my agents about because right now I'm telling a lot of people to save cash. I don't know if that's frowned upon. I don't know if the gurus on TikTok disagree with me, but I've never seen someone go bankrupt and out of business saving money. So I think right now I'd love to see our agents in like a cash saving, cost cutting, spending less, figuring out how to save more. But once they've saved more, a lot of our people want to go in, flip houses, do the things, which is great. But I've found one of the best things I can do is focus on making more money with my time, because that's usually the best use of my time. Finding a flip, going and seeing if the floors got done right, seeing if it passed permits, doing the thing, right? And then I get to the end of it and I'm like, great, I made 30 grand, 40 grand. But how many hours did I put in? And if I put those hours into driving more business, would I have made the same amount? So I'm of this thing of like, make more money, save cash. But then once you have the cash, I think syndications can be
Yep.
a great place to play. But here's my problem, Amy.
Yep.
So many of them look the same. Like every deal I get back has like a 1.8 multiple on it. Like they all have similar numbers. Like everything kind of looks the same. And so if people are looking to invest in syndications, what advice do you have for what to actually look at when they're getting into deals?
Okay. Thanks for your question. And just to kind of tie it up, traditional vehicles to save, everyone says SEP IRA. Have your financial guy look at a personal 401k for you. I'll tell you, it's been the best thing I did.
Like a checkbook one?
No, a savings personal 401k, which you can put up to $2,500. You can put up to 26,000 in it a year.
It's self-directed though. Is that the direction you're going?
I don't know if it's called personal 401k. That's all I
Okay.
know it's called.
Yeah.
Anyway, start saving some money that way. And of course, right now you can get all sorts of things, bonds and things
Yeah.
or you can just have savings account at 5.25. Get a CD for 6 months at 5.25. Put 10 grand in it. Like start being smart with that stuff. So right now, even my financial planner, I had some money. He goes, put it in a CD for 6 months at 5.25. Like, okay, I'll do that till I'm ready to invest. Syndication. Right now, the deals are a little different because of the high interest rates. So I never will work with somebody unless they've been done at least 2 to 3 buildings. I want to see the success of what they've done. There's a lot of syndications on smaller buildings, like 20 to 30. I have been looking at buildings with over 100 units. It seems to be better. The rental market is so strong, scary, but strong. And there's certain parts in the places in the country where it seems to be a little bit easier to do. Of course, Texas. I'm not going to do Florida. I have some in Texas, but also I'm looking in Tennessee. I'm looking in North Carolina. I would say what'll happen is I have all these groups now that want me into investing. Other thing is I'm seeing buildings that are like CD. So buildings come as like A, B, C, D. The A and Bs, you have to put a lot more money in and they claim a better return. So they'll say you'll get like a 8 to 10% return on your money. And then when you cash out after 3 to 5 years, you'll get 100%. That's what it was between 2017 and 2022. I'm seeing a totally different story now. So I would say start getting educated. And then I'm not investing right now, Tim. I'm waiting because all the deals just don't seem to, they're like,
Yeah.
now they want to hold your money for 5 to 7 years. Now, if I was your age, I probably could do 5 to 7 years, but I'm not your age, so I want things that are flipping in 3 years. I'll give you
Yeah.
an example. The woman who coached me on this, she started in 2017 and she was putting 100,000, 75,000 to 100,000 in every 3 years. She flipped. She now has $1.5 million in syndication deals and it generates for her $150,000 a year. Now she keeps on changing them up every 3 years, but that would be a good goal, like to get about 1.5 million in value. I am not there because I only started last year. So I don't know if I answer, but that's where I
Yeah.
see syndication. But I think the B2C, the larger buildings and in parts of the country where they're more open to working with these syndications and then only work with someone where they can prove to you that they've done a couple of deals because there's a lot of shysters out there.
Oh, there's so many. And right now, see, I think the other thing is too, people that weren't great operators did well in 2020, 21,
Yeah.
right? And that's the problem. So you may have someone that's not a great operator, but they have somewhat of a track record of success just because it was so easy. And so
Yeah.
finding a really good operator that's maybe been around since 2016, 17 is definitely the way to go.
The other thing I'm finding is that some of the newer investors, they're hiring property management companies and they're not living in the state where their properties are. They have to be visiting there. I decided that too, because I've seen some of my friends have had losses because they went
Yeah.
and got variable rate mortgages when they were told that they shouldn't. This is not for the faint of heart. You really need to do a lot of research and you need to know how to read a pro forma. They're going to, so you need to find some kind of group that will help you with it. Now, unfortunately,
Yeah.
mine cost a lot of money to join, but it was worth it for me.
So I always first you got to find the jockey before you find the horse.
Yeah.
You have to find the person that you trust. And that's the thing as real estate agents, you know, I've the best deals I've invested in have become available to me because of my relationships. So the best deals I've invested in never really did a public money race. It was always like, hey, I've got this thing. I'm hitting up five of my buddies. Like, do you want in? And so those are the types of relationships as agents we should be making. And the other thing, like you said, like going back to my thing is save money, save cash, and wait for the best deals because it's this little bit of a balance between diversification across multiple deals, but then also when you know you have a grand slam winner, like you want to put as much into it as you can. And so I think like I kick myself for putting in money into some deal that was pretty good and then a month later getting the one that was fantastic. And I was like, man, why did I put my money into that one? I should have saved it for this one. And so I think save a bunch of cash, fall in love with saving money, and then fall in love with looking at deals and just get really, really patient. I think in this market coming up, people with patient money will win because if you, there are going to be some great opportunities that come up in the next couple years.
I love that you invested with your friends. That's kind of what I'm doing. These are not public, it's within a group. So let's say the building that I just invested with, it was a $24 million building. They only asked investors to come up with the down payment for the loan.
Yeah,
Well, and if when you start, you don't have to be an accredited investor. An accredited investor means that you can show that you have at least $1 million of liquid assets. But if you can't prove that, it's liquid, right? I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
I'm not sure. I
Anyway,
try to pay attention as little as possible to rules.
some of the first ones I did, I only invested 25,000. Now
Yeah,
I'm at I'm looking at things between 100,000, 250,000, but that's from 2017. So I've had a track record. So if you start now, you might be able to get in for something with 25, but I agree with you, save your money. But if you're nervous, they don't always take accredited investors. Sometimes that your friends will take someone who's not accredited. I forget what
yeah.
to call you, but yeah,
No, yeah. So it sounds like a lot to say you're going to invest 100 grand into something,
yeah,
but that's where I would just fall in love with saving. So you can get to
yeah,
150, you can get to 200,
yeah.
and get a little uncomfortable. Like send that 100 grand off to some investment and know that okay, I'll see it. I'll see it in 3, 4, 5 years. Well, back to making money, back to work.
Yeah.
So one question that I sometimes ask our guests, Rafe always gets mad at me for not asking all of them, is a favorite quote. Like what's a quote that has had an impact on your life and your business? I know I could have asked you this ahead of time.
Wow. I do have a quote. Of course, I can't think of it. Okay, here it is. It's an anonymous poem, and it starts with, "Is anyone happier because you passed their way today?"
I like that.
My mentor always told me, if you don't have friends, you call people. If you don't have money, give money away. If you don't have food, invite someone over for dinner. Your pipes are clogged. So always take the onus on yourself to open those up and don't blame others. And then that quote.
I love that. I love that. That's a great quote. I'm glad you took a minute to think of a good one. I would have just spit something out that wasn't probably as impactful. So, Amy, anything else you want to leave our listeners with? All however many of them there are.
I'm just shameless plug for you guys. I am really impressed with the real model. I think it's something to be looked at if you're looking to change your company. And I know it's a shameless plug for you, Tim, but
Well,
I am
plug away.
I am really impressed with what you're doing and the infrastructure you're setting up for your team. You have to be work at a place that you're going to make money, that you're going to get training, but that you trust people that you're working for. So
Yeah.
the model is incredible to me. And more
So
importantly, look at it.
obviously, I love that you brought that up. The thing I will say is there's a lot of change coming in brokerage, and there's a lot of options out there for agents. And the thing that I look at is the model and what can this model do for me?
Yeah.
I think previously most real estate models were made in this hierarchy structure of, it's built for the franchise owner, international office, whatever. Here it's like you need to find a model that's built for agents. You need to find a model that's built for take care of agents, take care of teams. And then the thing that you mentioned is trust. Like you have to trust leadership. That's obviously the one of the most important things. So that's it.
So
I think we're pretty cool,
we're good.
but if you're out there looking, I would say those are the two things: a model that's for agents and leadership you can trust.
Love it.
Amy, thanks for being on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We'll see you.
See you. Bye.
All right.